And I am pleased to welcome to the 2025 edition of Statehouse Conversations, Senator Spencer Deery. He is of West Lafayette, District 23, for those who prefer numbers to names of towns. Thank you for being back. You're not, your first term, not a freshman, you have a session under your belt, but I was saying before we started rolling, for somebody who's been around a relatively short period of time, you've had a big impact. You had, in your first year, last year, some of the highest profile bills in terms of higher education, in terms of water usage and economic development. So I can only imagine what the encore is. How do you, if that's the opener, what's the main marquee event here? What do you have on tap this session?
Well, I came here to work, so I didn't leave my family to just twiddle my thumbs. So yeah, my priority though is the Indiana Economic Development Corporation still. Last year I was very focused on water, and that's still a focus, but that's shifted a little bit from the constituents' attention to really it all comes back to restoring trust of IEDC. You know, IEDC has done some amazing things, but in recent years they've lost the trust of the public, and if we don't restore that trust, they're going to lose trust in the agenda item of economic development. So we got to find ways to stop a lack of transparency when we can be transparent. We need more accountability, and so I've got some ideas to do that. One of them, principally, is I think we need somebody in these boardrooms of the IDC that has access to all the content, but whose their job is to think about efficient government, think about citizens, and they're not, killing any projects, but I would like to have an ombudsman with the IDC, reports through the State Board of Accounts, who already has a kind of an auditing function of the IDC and reporting to the General Assembly, who's in that room and is the citizen's advocate for.
And of course, IEDC, which, again, for those who don't live and breathe this stuff the way we do, Indiana Economic Development Corporation, which was sort of set up or altered from what had its predecessor to be more business-like and operate sometimes, I don't want to say in secrecy, but it was quasi-public, quasi-governmental. And did that go too far then in terms of the decisions being made behind?
So there's a pendulum. I mean, we don't want to go back to the days before the IDC. We were losing jobs, our economy was stagnant, everything was stuck in bureaucratic, mumbo jumbo, and now we
20
had
hearings before an offer could be
right. And the IDC's done some amazing things, but in recent years it started, I think, to become more of a land development kind of entity and operating in secrecy when it wasn't necessary. Some of that you can't avoid. You're dealing with public companies. There's going to be NDAs. That's the reality. But when you're buying large amounts of land for a massive real estate development, the locals should know what you're doing maybe before that happens. Or when you're spending $10 million to plan a pipeline from one area to another, that should be transparent.
And again, for those, I always try to put myself in the place of people who might be watching this who have slept since last session. You, of course, represent an area in Tippecanoe County where water was going to be taken, or is going to be taken, to supply the LEAP, so-called LEAP district, which is in Lebanon, just northwest of Indianapolis, the new office tech park. And the concern was that you and your constituents had, it was done without proper vetting, and we didn't really know as a state what the implications were. We've had some studies now, independent studies, that show that there is sufficient water, but still you sort of sounded the alarm that we need to be more logical when we move basin to basin.
And studies is one part of it. We also need the regulations in the sense that who's deciding is this a good idea, who's saying these studies are good, and who's capping it. The worst thing you could do is build a pipeline, and yeah, maybe it's fine now, but 30 years down the road, the recipient community is really thirsty and they pump up the pressure, and suddenly you're taking way more water than is sustainable. And we don't have any precautions against that right now, and so that's one of the priorities to address this session.
I'm so old, I remember when the artesian wells of Martinsville is the water everybody wanted before it became popular to want the West Lafayette water. But all kidding aside, some other issues on your agenda. Again, there's continuation to a large extent of what you started last year. Talk about some of those.
Yeah, so as I said with the water, my approach was to do a 2-year pause on any large pipelines. I think we might have another plan going forward, but also a 2-year study go along with that. And there may still be some studies needed. I'm also always focused on education still. Moving a bill soon that's going to make it easier for us to get STEM teachers. We've got a pathway to education for those that are outside already, but we don't have anything for those that are maybe get 2 years in their STEM major and realize, actually I'd like to be a teacher, and then would have to go start all over. This is a bill that would say, with addition of some additional courses, and passing a test, you could go on to become a licensed teacher.
And would this just be STEM, or could it be any field
So
where
right
one has
now
a
it's
proficiency?
right now it's just STEM, but I could see something like a English as a second language type path being needed. Any area where you have shortage areas,
And a proven ability through a
Right.
career that has unfolded.
Yeah,
in a
and there's
given-
research shows that if you've got the expertise, that's really the biggest thing, and add a little bit of teaching courses on there, and we could have a very effective teacher that we wouldn't have had otherwise.
And of course, that's oftentimes you're talking about K through 12. Last year, you got a lot of headlines for your focus on higher education.
Yeah.
Again, one of the high impact bills where you said, maybe the state institutions, there's sort of what you perceive to be a bias in the way certain ideas were being advanced, and there wasn't a representation of a lot of ideas. The fixes that have been made, do you deem them satisfactory, or is there more to do on that front?
Time will tell. The bill was really designed to give the local universities, the trustees, the ability to lead on these issues and correct some problems. It was also in a way, though, that if they don't want to do that, I think they could probably work around it. And then I think that unfortunately for everybody, I think that somebody's come through with a more heavy hand that may not be as desirable. So it's designed to let them to self-reform. We'll give them a year or two and see if they're taking it seriously, and if not, then we'll readdress the issue.
And before I let you go, any bill, we've talked about a lot of key issues. Budget certainly is on everybody's front burner. Is there anything else that you want to see happen or not happen this session that will allow you to go back to Tippecanoe County and say, hey, we did right by you?
Yeah, so this is one actually that not just Tippecanoe County, it's really a statewide thing that is not necessarily a priority. It wasn't anything I was looking to do, but it's gotten a lot of buzz, which I didn't really, actually I underestimated that. And a little quick story here. So, I'm not from a part of the area that's close to the border where we have, on the other side of the border, we have marijuana dispensaries. But as you travel those areas, you see billboards. And the first time I saw that, that's really weird. I didn't know you could do that. And then I kind of forgot about it. And then I started to realize that in West Lafayette, these companies 2 hours away are sending just mass mailings. They're not targeted, they're just mass mailings and kids are finding in the mailbox. And I know that, an absence of that isn't going to probably keep somebody who wants to go find a dispensary to go find a dispensary. That's fine, it's not my business. But I want to live in a place where drug use isn't normalized. And so in talking to attorneys, we can regulate that. In fact, states that have legalized marijuana regulate their advertising. We have no regulation of marijuana advertising, and so
even though we don't have legal sales,
right.
You can advertise in any way, shape, or form.
So no matter where you fall on the legalization debate, we need to be having a conversation about what rules of the road do we need for these advertising, and so that's the debate that I'm attempting to force. Just because I unwillingly got these mailers, and I thought this is weird, and as I studied it, there's something here that we're a little behind on. So hope to address that.
All right, Senator Spencer Deery of West Lafayette. Oh, last question I have to ask you, and this is in your because of your former role as the top administrator at Purdue University. My memory's a little foggy. Who won the bucket game this year? I'm just trying to remember.
Gosh, I think I was busy that day. I don't know. I blacked
We'll
out or
have
something.
maybe. Can you have your
know.
staff or
we'll
LS8
see.
research that?
Well, I don't. It's basketball season. I'm focused on basketball season.
I'm
so.
ready. Well, but I use a football school. We're ready to roll back again. So Spencer Deery again, Republican Senator, West Lafayette District 23. Thank you for taking time to chat about this session and your hopes for it. Thank you for your commitment to the state of Indiana and to public service. Much appreciated.
Happy to do so. Appreciate the time.
Nice job.